You're live.
Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy holiday for those of you who are in areas who celebrate the Martin Luther King birthday holiday. And welcome to Power Talk. I am your host, Jean Adrienne, and it is my pleasure to have you watching and listening today and to be back with you after a little bit of a break. It was a much needed break, I think, for both me and for my producer. But here we go, and we're starting off a brand new baby year. We're going to create this year to be the most incredible year ever. So let's just kick it right off with a wonderful show today. My guest today is Helen Heinmiller. Helen is a healer and an author, and she focuses on peace, and she has a brand new book out. Her book is called Final Redemption. So Helen, welcome.
Well, oh, thank you, Jane, for having me. I am so excited to be part of your show. And you were right. This is going to be a wonderful year for us.
It already is. I mean, yeah. I've had so many breakthroughs just in the first, 14 days of this year that I'm probably not even the same person I started the year off as. How about that one?
Oh, I love that. I don't think any of us are. Whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. Well, Helen, so many of the people who talk about finding peace in their life decide to write books that are nonfiction, and they're more how-to and self-help to help us to kind of get to that place. But I love that you have created a work of fiction that is doing the same thing. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about your book and the message of the book?
Oh, sure. I would love to. Final Redemption is really a product of, me, of my experience in the world. And I choose storytelling, Jean, because I have gone through many self-help books, and I find them all very valuable. But I also know that many people, when you are talking about paradigm shifting truths, that will rock their world, what they know to be so in their life. I find that a lot of people cannot take it in that format of self-help. They get defensive and they go, oh my gosh, this is reality. This is what it is for me. But storytelling, just like with the science fiction, like Star Wars and books like that, create an avenue of opening in people to just be able to safely go to a different reality that maybe isn't theirs and live in it and swim in it for a while. And then later in life, many, many times, and I find this that happens to me when I watch movies, I'll remember something that I saw in a movie that really was, impacted me at the time. And I'll go, oh, that's what they meant. And it becomes more acceptable to a person after they've been able to swim in it in a safe zone, like in a little playground, and play with it for a while. So that's why I love, creating characters that you can identify with, and you can put yourself in their shoes and go, what would I do in that situation? And so that's my gift of storytelling, seems to be my way of bringing in these new truths to the world.
Well, and it's absolutely a perfect way, I think, because the storytelling avenue brings those truths in and speaks to the right side of the brain, which is that receptive, that more creative side of the brain. And when you do a self-help book, you're talking to the left side of the brain, and that's linear mode.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, is why it doesn't get received so well. So have you always been on the spiritual path and really kind of focused on spirituality?
Yes, since I was born. And the problem was that I didn't know I was on a spiritual path. So when I was young, I did come in with gifts of intuitive gifts that really didn't resonate with the rest of my family. And so it was a natural thing as I started voicing my opinions that I realized that, I am different than everybody else. And at one point, I think I just, at that young age, just put it away and said, okay, I don't want to deal with this part of me. And then later in life, when I was around 28, I started having profound supernatural experiences that could not be explained in any other way than this is a spiritual thing happening to me. And then after fighting it for a while, I embraced it. And then that's where I learned the new things that I write about in my book. Yeah.
Perfect. So this new book, Final Redemption, is there a specific message that underlies this book?
Yes, there is. And I consider this a sacred truth that we're all hearing about in different modalities and different forms. But there is an answer in this story to how we begin to change the world. Mm-hmm. And it is a paradigm shifting thought of what it's going to take to create peace in the world. And I'll tell you, it's not military intervention.
You think?
Yeah, you think. And I know some people get very upset about that. And I've had people walk out of talks when I've said all the military might in the world is not going to bring peace. Mm-hmm. And we keep, repeating the same trajectory in history, playing that same pattern over and over again that never works. Force does not work. Love works.
Yeah. And it's an inside job. Peace is an inside job. It's got to start inside our own hearts. Absolutely. Before it can go out into the world. But I think the timing on this book is fairly amazing because what you're talking about is potential nuclear holocaust in your book. And boy, are we teetering on the edge of that right now or what?
Well, when I first came up with this storyline, which followed my first book, but it took several years before I even began to write it. And I thought when I created the storyline, oh my gosh, this is really far out there. I can never see us in a place in the world where we're back to that nuclear threat. The environmental disasters are coming so fast that the world can't keep up with them. And we're teetering on the edge of disaster, maybe a path that won't be able to be reversed. So I'm thinking I'm creating this far off story. And as the years went through and as I published, when we published the book last year, all these events started happening. And I went, oh, darn, I hope this isn't prophetic because, I'm hoping stories like this change people's attitudes to create a different, path to go down, just realizing this story shows us that old path doesn't work anymore. So what do we do to change the world, to save it?
Exactly. And it just takes courage on the part of individuals, just like your heroine in your book. And you got a pretty major villain in your book as well. Yeah. So did you model this villain after somebody that you know?
I think this villain is an accumulation of all the villains in the world because he is pretty darn evil, and that's what this whole story is about. It's about this person, just like you or me, that comes to face evil itself, and we keep looking for somebody to save us. Who's going to be our knight in shining armor that's going to come into the world, that celebrity, that big person, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. None of them seem to be the one that just makes that final change for us. It's because it's up to all of us. Mm-hmm. We have to face the evil that is in this world. And inaction is an action. Indecision is a decision. And we have to realize we are a part of the answer. Every one of us. It's not going to be up to just one small group of people to change the world.
We live in choice on a moment by moment basis. And the choices are quite myriad, but if you really boil them all down, they boil down, in my opinion, to two: love or fear.
That's exactly what I would have said if you asked me that. We respond either in fear or we respond from a place of love. And that goes to power versus force. Mm-hmm. Love is a power. That's what we don't fully embrace. But the power of love isn't the power of dominance. It's a power that is an absolute freeing power for everybody. So I think that we're seeing a lot of stories coming out and movies and people speaking about this nature of love, that we've kind of either classified it as that, puppy love, in love with someone, but love is just a power that when you tap into it can create miracles, will create miracles. It's not a matter of whether they can, it will once you connect with it.
Yeah, and the old paradigm, the way I see this anyway, the old paradigm really had to do with trying to work things out with our mind, which ends up being that force aspect. If you consider David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, it ends up being the force aspect.
Right.
And the way I see this new reality that we are living in as we have moved, I believe this planet has moved into the fifth dimension. And it's dragging some kicking and screaming. But some of us are really ecstatic about that. And that is dealing with the world from the space of the heart. So that's a pretty big gulf, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, we see, even from what happened in Hawaii this weekend, that there was 20 minutes where a group of people thought that their lives might come to an end. And how did they react in those moments? Was it from love or was it from fear? Those that loved calmly took the time to connect with their family members and, and get their things in order without panic, without resisting the change, just, and other people, panicked and went into the fear mode. And, but we didn't see much of that. We saw more of the stories of inspiration of people calling their family and saying, I love you. And if this is the way we're going, okay, just you go on and live in peace. And that's where we've lost it in our systems, is because we are not coming from the view of love. And we see the countries that are, like Norway, and those that are basing their financial systems, their education systems in love. They don't have to have a lot of money to have happiness and to succeed, And so that's what the rest of the Western world that is so caught up in this, fury of survival of the fittest, and your worth is what's most important, your money worth. We're starting to crack. And when the environmental events come and wipe away our home, we're getting that wake-up call of what really is important. And everybody always says, at least we have ourselves, we have our safety, we're here, and so the whole world is getting a reality call right now. And I am happy, because even though it looks ugly to us right now, and in the book it's even uglier than what we're presented with here, there is hope. There are people that are making the changes. We just don't get to hear about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners and viewers get their hands on your book?
Well, it's available through all book retailers, online, through Sacred Stories Publishing, and through my website. So,
and your website is
evolvingtruths.com or helenheinmiller.com. You can get to it either way. Yes.
Yeah. So, you, as I understand this, and I don't know you very well yet, but I'm sure that I will get to know you better. But you've made a pretty major shift in the focus of your life. And can you talk to us a little bit about that, about how your focus is changing as you evolve?
Well, I used to be in corporate America, and I actually have a high school degree. I did not go to college, but I was able to make my way up through major corporations to management level, and then I went off to become a purchasing manager of a smaller company, but a very big position. And I was at the top of my world, Jean. I made it to the top of the ladder, and I was miserable. And all that success, all that, the money, the success, but I was a working mother, and I was exhausted, and I was overstressed, and the competition was so fierce, and because I didn't have a college degree, I had a lot at stake, to lose if I, made any false moves. But I started having, at that moment, I started having some supernatural things that happened to me, could not be explained in any other way. They were angelic interventions. And I thought I was actually going crazy, having a nervous breakdown from all the stress I was under. But when the rug got pulled out from under me and I left that world, I discovered the real me. I
Mhm.
discovered who I really was. I discovered the writer in me, number one. I was too big. I knew I always wanted to write, but I was too busy in that world to have any time for myself. And it was a very rough tumble, to be ripped out like overnight from that world. But then I spent a long journey of self-discovery and realizing what is really important in life. And also finding my voice and how am I going to bring what I know now out to the world, because I know there's so many people that come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I was just like you. I have been driving myself crazy, and now that I'm taking a step back, I'm finding what real happiness is. And I think a lot of us don't even know what happiness is.
Yeah.
I mean, you think you're happy, but you're not, but I can say that I can be 100% alone without anything, around me, without any financial gain, without anything. I can just be in a room by myself and experience pure joy. And that is something that took a long time to connect with. I could hold it for 30 seconds, but now I understand how to move into that greater dimension of myself, and it is what I'm experiencing is the greater dimension, the higher dimension of me, Helen Heinmiller, and
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really, my hope from today's show is that somebody, anybody, everybody who is watching us will see that you have done this. And so it's possible for them.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, I think really that tends to be the way that we start this ball rolling, is a lot of times we're afraid to make a shift, take a stand because of what might happen. But if we see that somebody else has done it,
Hmm.
then it gives us the courage
Hmm.
to try it. Maybe just try it.
Yeah, yeah. And I always, I finally got to the point of try it. What do you have to lose? You can always go back if it doesn't work.
Exactly.
But it does
Exactly.
take a leap of faith. It takes a huge leap of faith to let go of all that you thought you were. The corporate world, the being a mother, I mean, it goes to every level of yourself, the being the wife, the sister, the friend. Sometimes you have to stand up and maybe risk part of that life, because it isn't your authentic self in that
Mhm.
life,
Yeah, I mean, you call your book Final Redemption, but it also could be called Total Surrender,
Yes, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And that's what the main character goes through,
Right.
is figuring this out and surrendering to that greater part of her, which is
Hmm.
an unknown. So you don't know how it's going to look. And as soon as you try to think, as what we do is we start doing this process, Jean, and then an outcome on it. Well, this when I let go of everything, this is what it's going to look like. And then you define something that isn't maybe the real you, and so then you stumble again. But when
Hmm.
you finally go and let go, and every day when I journal, I only write one thing in my journal, one request, and that is, tell me what I need to know today.
Boy, you and I must be soul sisters, because
Of
that's
course
what
we
I
are.
do in
Yeah,
my journal
yeah,
every day as well. And
yeah.
it's so interesting that to me that, even though I get this, I get it completely, but yet I still, there's a piece of me that doesn't really want to relinquish that control. There's been something that I've been dealing with now for weeks, at least maybe months, that I've been wanting to manifest and create in my life. And finally, this weekend, I had a huge epiphany that it's just not that important. Let it go, and let spirit give you whatever Spirit's supposed to have for you. And I was like, okay. And I did let go
Mm-hmm.
up to a point. And I caught myself because, I mean, I've been doing this over and over and over again for most of my life. You know, I try to walk my talk and walk in surrender, but always keeping a toenail on that diving board, you know? And I caught myself this time and I was like, whoops, okay. This time I'm completely letting it go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't care because whatever it is, I know is going to be for my highest good.
Right. And most of the time, Jean, when you let go, it ends up being something better than you can imagine, because the
Absolutely.
universe has available to us every possible thing there can be in creation. And so when we put that defined outcome, we limit what the universe has there to offer, which is usually way better than what we could ever envision for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I just recently let go. This year, I've let go of my company, Evolving Truths, and I'm disbanding the business side of me that was selling meditations and all that stuff. And I worked really hard to get that built,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not. And as soon as I did, everything kind of fell apart, and I wasn't producing for all the effort that I was putting in. And so I had to come to and I had a supernatural intervention that said, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You know, you're supposed to be writing your next novel. And even though I thought, well, I need to get these tools that I know out to everybody, I'm not the vehicle for that. And so I had to let it all go and strip away everything that I was working on and go back to just being a writer, more reclusive. But that business, that corporate part of America part of me, that purchasing manager, I had to retire. She had to go into retirement
Mm-hmm.
because that was taking my focus off of something else that was greater, that would provide for me something bigger that I just don't know what it is yet. And so, you know, we have to take those leap of faith, you know. And I finally said, you know, well, if maybe this comes back later. You know, maybe this will come in when the world is ready to hear it, or you know, maybe that purchasing manager just stays retired and
Mm-hmm.
I just go and immerse myself into the next project, which may have nothing to do with my reaction, my interaction with the world. It may be just a complete personal journey, the next step of my evolution, you know. And
Yeah. Now, several times, and you've really piqued my curiosity on this one, several times you've mentioned that you have experienced supernatural intervention. Can you
yeah,
tell us about one of those? Because I'm really curious.
well, I'll tell
It
you about
fascinates me.
I'll tell you about the first one that happened while I was in corporate management.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my husband and I moved to Virginia. I had a baby and we moved 5 days after I had the baby. C-section. So I moved to another state. I have no church. I have no family. I have no friends. I'm first baby, new house, new job for my husband. And then I eventually went back to work as a manager too. So we had all this stress, you know, going on, and I'm making my way back up the corporate ladder, and I'm trying to be a mom at the same time. And I'm super stressed, but I am at the top. You know, I am doing what I had dreamed I always supposed to do. But I got a little stressed out. So I started going to this night prayer group at this local church that we were attending. And it was these 5 women, and they were very different people than I had ever met. They had the spiritual gifts of tongues and interpreting tongues. And it was a very far out group, but they were like these older women that were nurturing me. And so I would go every Tuesday night. Well, one night they said, do you want to receive the Holy Spirit as an adult? And, you know, I was like, well, okay, I guess. And they said, okay, well, you know, when you do this, you will receive one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And I went, oh, okay, I'll do it. Anything but tongues. Don't give me tongues. I don't want to do that one. So they did their little thing on me, and I was supposed to fall back on the floor, and I didn't. And like, you know how they fall back, you know,
Right, right.
And I'm like, oh my God, I got rejected by the Holy Spirit. So I left that meeting and I was just like so depressed, oh my gosh, I'm not even making it in the religious world. And I'm driving home and I'm going through this cornfields and this farmland, very, very twisty U-turn kind of roads. This big Lincoln is barreling down behind me, that old-fashioned kind of monster car, and I'm in this little tiny compact car, and the lights are in my head, in my mirror, and I'm really, really stressed, and I'm coming up to this big U-turn, and all of a sudden the person next to me goes, "Stop, dear." And so I start slamming on the brakes, and as I come around the bend, there is this big deer on my side of the road, just standing there, and I'm about to plow into it. But as I get closer, and this is split second kind of happening, the deer was like lifted up, like two hands on the back of the deer, and just put over onto the side of the road. The deer didn't jump off the road. It was lifted, like carried over to the side of the road. Well, all this is happening, and I'm coming around, and of course the car behind me is screeching its brakes because it saw my brake lights before I went into the turn. And I get past that, and I finally make a turn off that road. That car goes by me. I pull over to the road. I'm shaking to the core, because it was such a split second thing. And I turned to the person next to me and said, "Thank God you were here," and realized that I was alone in the car. And it was as if you were sitting next to me. I felt the presence of a body sitting next to me, screaming in my ear, hitting my ear from the outside. It wasn't in my head. And I just looked at that seat and I went, what just happened? And so that was the beginning of the type of events that would happen to me. And then I started hearing voices talking to me, saying it was time to write. And so I was like, I can't write. I have this big job and we need the money and all that stuff. And a few months later, they said that I would be moving back home to get support of the family and that all would be cared for. And a few months later, I had my whole job just completely fall apart at work. And I walked into human resources and I felt like there was somebody holding each elbow, guiding me into human resources. And I submitted my resignation. And I never went back to corporate America from that time on.
I love it. That's beautiful. Wow. So, last question. Do you, through your eyes and after writing this book, do you actually see us being able to achieve final redemption as a human species?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. And I think it's already happening.
Yeah. I do too. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great chat today. So viewers, her book is called Final Redemption, and go get it because it's really good. It's a page turner, and there are activations on so many of the pages that as you read this book, your life can change if that is your choice. So thank you so much, Helen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gina. I'm so happy to be with you and everyone.
All right. And so viewers, we're back into the new year. We are in full swing, and I will see y'all next Monday. Join me then. And until next time, remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. Ciao.